everyone. Hello everyone. Welcome to our oh my gosh, it's already June. June development update. Are you ready for this? Oh,
I
and
mean,
look
it's
at
not
look at
July.
them. They're in like a more HD camera. you know. We're like we're going to be in this until probably August. So, yeah. Um how are you both
Maybe we'll
doing?
get some new cameras. But I'm doing good. Steven, how are you?
Uh-oh, did Steven's
Steven, we can't
USB
hear
die
you.
again?
I'm used to my Zoom meetings and not having push to talk in that, and I forgot.
See, you did what I did. You were just making fun of me. He was
I
just making fun of me. He was like, "Oh, you had an audio
know.
issue last time." I was like, "No, because I just wasn't holding push to talk for you. All the audience heard me. You just didn't hear me."
So
Also,
I pause,
Steven,
pause my segment.
you look like you're in a green screen background. Like that doesn't look
Well,
like that's actually.
so two crazy things happened this morning. First of all, just so everybody's aware, I was trying to get a last minute kind of recording for you guys on the design front, and just a few things were going wrong there. And that took a little while extra. So it's actually uploading right now. So I'm going to hand it off to Margaret here in a little bit. We're literally going to, do
Do it
this.
live.
We'll do it live. But as I was trying to plug in this new webcam that I got to my main computer in my office here, uh, my USB ports died again. And luckily, I have this computer set up in my hallway. And I was able to connect through this, but I had to then set up, TeamSpeak and Slack and everything. So I'm sorry we're late. That's totally my fault, not Margaret or Jeff's.
That's okay. But yeah, we kept adding time, and like people are like freaking out. I was like, "It's okay, everyone. We're gonna start. We'll give you the hour. Don't worry." We always tend to end up going a little over anyway. But just to kind of, you know, introduce everything, first and foremost, we'll kind of talk about who we are because we do have a lot of new people in our community. So if you haven't watched any of our previous updates, you can go watch them because we try to keep you all updated on all the things. Also, there's been a lot of cool stuff if you're interested in checking it out. We also have more like digestible content as well, like smaller videos. While we're home for COVID, it's a little harder to make those pieces, but once we return back into the office, we're hoping that we can start those back up. We have a lot of stuff planned. So, Stephen, if you kind of want to talk about what you do at the studio, besides be the man.
I'm trying to fix my camera because it keeps like falling off of this thing that I've kind of set up. Okay, sorry.
What are you holding your camera on behind the
It's
scenes?
it's sitting on top of this tower that's on top of this little desk, and the like cord is making it turn it's just not stable. But anyways, what do I do? Yeah, I'm the creative director here at Intrepid Studios, and yeah, that's what I do.
Yeah, and then of course we have Jeff.
Hi, I'm Jeff. I am the lead designer, and that is some airplanes and helicopters.
Cool, cool. Yeah, we have a lot of those in our area. And then, of course, I am Margaret Crone. I'm your community marketing lead. So that kind of gives you the gist of that. Today, we are going to be going over our studio update. We have design chat that we're going to talk about, and we have a lot of cool character art things that we're going to do. And then we have a Q&A. So you all have submitted some questions, and then, of course, we'll take some questions as well in chat. So first and foremost,
Yeah.
we have some quick updates. We have a new dev discussion that will be coming up in July, so definitely stay tuned for that. Our last one was pretty cool. It was called "Should all classes be able to perform all roles expected of their archetype, or should there be clear demarcation of different categories?" And I think some of that we had some very interesting responses to that. And I know the design team has been sending us some fun questions, and of course, reading through those responses. Also, our monthly cosmetic swap over has been extended. We'll notify everyone in advance before the new ones swap over. And then we also have a reminder that we are giving out a commemorative statue. So this will be a small in-game home decor item to commemorate the COVID-19 challenge that we will overcome. And I'll actually show that statue again. The statue will be granted to all accounts who have registered or do register during this time frame. So we'll let you
By the
know.
way,
So go
last
ahead.
time we showed that, I noticed there was a question in chat asking about whether or not the effects that they see there on the statue would be an effects in the game on the decor item. The answer to that question is yes. There will be a slight effects shimmer that exists to kind of represent the wormhole that exists in the Divine Gateway, sort of the aperture there, and that'll be kind of a little rotating and little particulates that come off of it.
Cool. Yeah, and this is just a home decor item that you'll be able to have in your house.
I also noticed in chat that they said it's not a good depiction of social distancing. However, the space.
It's what we're going to do once we're over.
To be fair, there are literally trillions of kilometers of space between those two people because they're on the other sides of the aperture there.
Technically, they're the most socially distanced.
Yeah.
All right, cool. And then, of course, not last but least, but not last. I don't know what I'm saying anymore. Last but not least, there we go. English is not my first language. Creative Director's Letter will be coming at the end of this month, so stay tuned for that as well. Unless, Stephen, you have an update for me. Other than that, that's all I know.
No, it'll be either be on the 30th or the 1st, but I'm almost positive it'll be on the 30th, so I think we'll be fine.
Cool. Hold them to it. No, I'm just kidding. We'll keep you guys informed. I know. It's because I get yelled at, Stephen. I get yelled at. So first, let's talk about the studio update. Talk about hiring. Obviously, working from home and hiring has been a really interesting thing. And then, of course, working from home in general.
Yeah, absolutely. So some of you guys may have seen on the forums and Discord, I think I shared a couple pictures of us moving out of the old studio, which has been a very sad. I know it's been very sad. There's so many.
It's bittersweet.
So many memories that were had there, but we're almost completely moved out. Obviously, we're still adhering to the guidelines, both from the local, state, and federal authorities, in regard to how to essentially best ensure the safety of our team, and that's obviously our first and foremost priority. So we're not anticipating being in a new studio until the end of August, roughly, and that's at the soonest. Unfortunately, I have been watching the recent news with regards to the upticks in cases, and that's definitely disappointing to see. Hopefully it does not impact our date to get back in the office. But with that being said, we are very efficient in working from home. Our team has been great in that regard. We've actually seen an uptick in productivity, which is always nice to have. And on the hiring front, actually, I just completed a couple of interviews yesterday, one of which we have a new engineer who'll be joining the team in a week's time.
Ooh, good to hear.
And we do have lots of resumes flowing in. So keep up. If those of you out there who are helping us kind of spread and share the socials that the community teams puts up with regards to open positions, it's always helpful. It's a very competitive market, and it's always good to get every leg up we can.
Yeah, I mean, we've been posting them frequently, so we really do appreciate any extra blasts we can get from the community. It always helps. We're looking for people, so I know there's been a lot of people who have unfortunately lost their jobs due to this, and we're fortunate enough to be able to be supplying jobs. So if you're looking, come join our family. We have it's very interesting because when people join, normally we can say hi to them in real life, and now it's just like a chat filled with people going, "Hi, welcome," and like asking questions. But hopefully, everyone feels like they're very welcome.
Margaret, I'm gonna check on that download link real quick. Give me a second. You keep going.
He has to run to the other room. Yeah, that's fine.
It's a super weird experience, right? Like because you don't even actually the people that you're hiring, you never meet them in person. Like they're on your team, but you've never shook their hands, and it's a different experience.
And also, not only that, it's like onboarding people. Obviously, we're doing a lot of documentation in regards to that to help people who are starting so that they're able to catch up really quickly. But it's much easier when you have somebody in the office. You can just walk over and answer questions or kind of guide them through the process. Having to do like video calls or, even screen share, it's just not the same.
But your finger can't go through the screen, right? You can't just point at something and be like, that's what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's just a little bit harder, at least on the communication front. But we're getting it together. We got processes that are working pretty well. So it's just a really, really surreal experience.
Yeah, it has been. I have not experienced something like this before, so it definitely has been very different. Let's go into design stuff while we're waiting for Steven. Obviously, that's stuff that you can talk on. You can't really talk on the studio stuff as much as he can.
This is
Swapping
true.
the topic. Let's go into what y'all have been working on in the process of all of that. Obviously, you got a lot of feedback from the playtests that we've done
Yep.
so far, and we've had specific playtests even internally where we're like, "Hey, we're going to test this one specific thing," outside of the tests that we've done with PI.
Yeah, so the tests went really well. Things were overall pretty stable and pretty robust. So we were really happy to see that everything kind of stayed up, except for some Caravan issues. For the most part, like our servers performed the way we wanted them to. We were able to find a few more pretty significant optimizations that we can make to how things run. Making sure that we can get tons and tons of people on all at the same time with all the mobs that we're talking about. So that was really good. Obviously, there were tons of bugs. This is a really early view of things, so there's a lot of stuff going on there. But for the most part, a lot of it was stuff with what we expected to hear in terms of feedback and stuff. There were some new bugs that we found out about that we wouldn't have found out otherwise, which was good. So overall, it was a super successful test. And right now, last couple of weeks, we've been working on sort of documenting all that stuff, getting caught up on how our systems work and making sure that any new people that we bring on, we can just hand them that doc and they know how to run with it. So that's kind of what our focus has been bug fixing, optimizations, and then documentation. So that's kind of, I guess, would be a more probably boring for people to kind of experience. It's not like we're working on great new systems right now. It's more shoring up all the stuff that we found out in those last play tests. So, but it's good for us and it's good for progress.
Margaret, I sent you the download link in
Yep,
Slack.
I'm already downloading it.
Okay.
Now, you talked about like there's some bugs that you wouldn't have ever known if you didn't have the playtest. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more in detail with that. I know maybe for us it's like something that we gloss over because we're working on it, we're fixing it already. But for the audience, maybe they can understand like, oh, that's what these tests help us find.
Yeah, so one of the things, we had some collision issues with certain objects in our nodes that were causing sort of relatively poor server performance, but it was only happening with a certain, that's my daughter. Hi, Audrey.
She wants to tell us all about it.
She does. She's pretty great. And she's very excited to go outside and swing, I think is what she's doing right now. So with the limited number of people that we can throw at it with our internal studio, right? We don't see those things, but once we get more people from a playtest all on server at the same time, those things start bubbling up, and we were able to find that stuff, fix it, and it would have been a really huge problem if we hadn't found it. It was actually really significant. So stuff like that is what we find. It's usually sort of just the critical mass of people that you get on a server can surface more things way faster than you could with just a studio alone.
Cool. So what's the progress on Alpha 1 and how are you feeling about all of that?
Well, we're marching toward it, right? This was kind of a really big milestone on the way there, right? Validating our servers, making sure all that stuff is running the way we want it to, making sure we've got all of our flows correct, making sure that that our server stands up for people. So all those things, check those boxes. The systems that we were testing, all the mayorship stuff, the Caravan stuff, we got enough feedback and information about those to make sure we can continue to carry those forward. So yeah, I mean, it's looking good.
Awesome. Anything else you want to add to that, Steven, while I'm trying to get the video prepped?
Sure. I missed the context of the initial question or topic.
In regards to Alpha and what everyone's working on.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. So we've run a few tests now with PI, and those are great, as Jeff kind of explained, in establishing, I think, the foundation moving forward towards the the fall anticipated full release of Alpha 1. It's always beneficial. Right now I think primary responsibility on the design front is kind of establishing the iteration on the documentation side, as well as we onboard additional people and we revise kind of our practices and implementation methods based off of the experiences that we saw out of these tests and the tests moving forward. All of those things are very beneficial for us kind of hitting the milestones that we have, and we can't thank enough the testers and future testers, you guys who have.
Yeah, for real. It was really super useful.
Absolutely, and getting on board all of the Bravers and all of the Intrepid pack holders, I think, those are those are going to be some serious alpha testing, and I hope you guys are prepared for that because it is not, likely going to be pretty, but
True alpha.
it's going to be very
This is
helpful
not a
to.
finished game yet.
Exactly. It's going to be very helpful for us to get to the end mark. I think so many of us have experienced launches of MMOs that we wish would have been better, and that we wish, would have been more stable and higher quality. And, really, because so many of us have lived through those experiences as gamers as well, our objective is to take it steady and to refine as much as possible. And we're okay with the bumpiness leading up to that launch during these alpha and beta stages, and we hope you guys are understanding and expecting that. But ultimately, the end goal is to have a very stable, quality level launch, which all of these milestones get us there.
Yeah, and so far it's been fairly smooth with our tests. Cross our fingers, the trend continues. But we've been able to do fairly well. I think even in the PI test, we didn't have any major crashes that were causing any trouble, so it was nice. And yeah, you're gonna hear sounds in the background. We're all working from home, so you're gonna hear people in our other people that we share our homes with doing stuff, like dogs and cats.
That was actually me spilling my water on my mouse, and I don't have a towel nearby, but I do have this little emoji poop.
Oh, wow.
So I'm wiping the water off of the desk with the emoji poop.
I think they heard someone
lose any more
sneeze, which was probably my boyfriend in the background sneezing, and of course Jeff's children or child.
She's like 3 children.
By the way,
Yeah.
notice how this poop is shaped in the form of a pyramid.
Does it
Isn't that
have
weird?
ears?
No, I'm just,
That's super.
But here's the question: does that thing
trying
have
to say
ears?
I'm just kidding. Oh,
It looks like it has floppy ears.
I think it does. I think
That's
it's a reindeer
weird.
poop. Well,
Why?
It's a reindeer, because it's a reindeer poop.
This reminds me. Okay.
It's a Christmas poop?
Y'all asked for Stufferton, and guess what? We posted a photo of him earlier, enjoying the sun in my backyard because we had to take him out of the office, and everyone's like, "Where is he at?" He's hanging out with me.
You
So
have Stuffertons?
You kidnapped Stuffertons?
I can't really hold on to him.
God.
Oh, Stuffertons has come out of the galaxy.
Yeah, why is he wearing a Hawaiian shirt? Is it Hawaiian Shirt
I
Friday?
can't hold him. He's too big. He's bigger
We
than
have
me.
at the office, by the way,
dang, I think it
Hawaiian
is.
Shirt Fridays and tie-dye Shirt Fridays. But judging by the looks of Mr. Stufferton's at the moment, it appears it's a
This just proves
Hawaiian
how small I am because he's bigger than me. Like the bear is bigger than me. But I have to like hold my mouse all weird. Yeah, he's wearing a Hawaiian shirt because he's on vacation, Steven.
Oh, is that what working from home is?
Yeah,
Vacation?
no,
He's
well
not
he
doing
he
anything?
he's always on vacation. Maybe not, we're not, but
You need to
All
get his butt back to work. How's that download going? I'm sure they want to see the video.
oh yeah, I'm ready. I was just gonna transition to that next if you're down.
Well, I think it's a more of a design, related video, so it might be appropriate for a design section.
All right, yeah, I think so too.
for
I'm
any
gonna transition to this. I apologize if the audio is really loud or something's weird with it. I will try to fix it and adjust it as quickly as possible because I have not tested the scene, whereas all the other ones I have. So
It's not Margaret's fault. I'm always
it's
last
not
minute.
my fault. Yeah. All right, I'm sending it over. Bye.
Hey guys, we are here in the world of Vera and just wanted to kind of give you guys a short video showcasing a little bit of the in-node housing features. I got Jeff and Margaret with me.
Hi, everyone.
So we are situated here currently in what appears to be a stage 3 village develop Hyperion node. And I think what we want to do, let's jump on our mounts and see if we can fly up and get a kind of a bird's eye view of the city. There we go. Perfect. So as you can see, even at the stage 3 development as a village, it's a fairly sizable layout, and part of these layouts include essentially static in-node housing for players to be able to purchase. Now, These housings are definitely important. They allow the player to essentially, craft certain types of furnitures and or crafting benches, processing areas, also essentially the small farm plots that come with these end-node housings. And they're, not sizable, but they do have a special flag that allows for certain types of unique crops to be built, which are integral in certain types of crafting components. So I think what we want to do right now, maybe let's run down to one of these houses. Let's go in the corner over here. And we can take a look a little bit at the furniture inside, and also maybe talk a little bit about the amenities that are offered. And at every kind of stage, let's see here. Jump off my guy. Hello, buddy. Thanks.
Good.
So if you press E to interact, oh, this one might already be sold, actually. That's unfortunate. And they haven't listed it for sale. It's not working for me. So let's go over.
How strange.
I know. Let's run over here. Maybe there's a... Maybe there's one over here.
Shopping for houses with Steven.
I know, right? I don't see one there either.
There's one
somebody,
here.
Somebody purchased all these houses? Oh, here we go. Okay, perfect. Plot 81. Lol. Okay, so no owner here. Let me purchase it. All right, I own it. And then we can take a look inside.
This house belongs to Steven.
Yeah. Now, I'm not getting that, luckily. But as you can see here, there is already essentially a pre-furnished version of the house that's been available. And, the idea
You
here...
need to make your bed.
I know, I'm so sorry. The idea here, though, is that, each size, essentially, of the type of housing you own is going to determine the amount of available space from a furnishing standpoint. And, as I said, if we go back here and take a look at some of the, let's see if I can, do I want to sell the house? Oh, I sold the house. That's so sad. I sold it back to the city, but that's because I want to take a look at these amenities. So as you can see, the amenities for this particular house allow for the ability to, first and foremost, have storage chests. That's obviously an important part that many of us are used to in MMOs we play. Additional inventory space is always important, and part of that, the storage facilities of homes require that players essentially build those containers and place them, and they can upgrade them, and there's restrictions on which house can kind of contain what types and what grades of storage containers that have additional inventory capacity. You can see the next option is essentially a furniture option, and this really kind of shows that decor items can be placed within. It's going to have a limit of the number of decor items that can be used, and even the grade of those decor items. And those decor items have certain functionalities, obviously. The third item here that you see is the for sale sign. That means that this is sellable. You can sell this structure essentially again. And that's important because we do have other housing systems like the freehold system where you cannot sell your freehold. So it's important to kind of make that distinction. This does have a gatherable, essentially a gatherable area that can be utilized by the player to essentially plant specific types of harvestables and crops available to them. It is destructible here. So this is essentially showing that this particular house, if the node comes under siege, can be destroyed. So be aware of that aspect. And then additionally, this is kind of showing that it is what size of house it is. This is a small cottage-style home, which means specific implications for the opportunity for it to upgrade. If the node advances, players can essentially select an option on their house as they own it that they want it to upgrade to the next stage if the node advances, or they can select an option not to upgrade it. As the node levels and larger homes become available, the town stage introduces additional medium types housing. The city stage introduces large size homes, and the metropolis stage introduces mansion size houses, each of which contain specific allowments or excuse me, allotments, um, allowances and allotments for different types of furnishings that have gameplay implications. And the profession behind furniture making or carpentry is obviously an important one that players can utilize in order to augment their crafting abilities. So this is just kind of a short little showcase, essentially, of the EndNode housing, some of the work that design has been putting into and engineering has been putting into making all these things functional, allowing players to take these furnitures and place them how they want, and really kind of make their home their own. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And I know people will ask, like, can I actually sit on furniture at some point? Because obviously this
Oh,
is early
absolutely.
iterations.
Yeah, all the
Yes.
stuff will be interactable.
Yes.
And, turning the lights on and off.
Yep, all that fun functionality to kind of make all of our RP spirits warm and cuddly.
And full.
And full.
And of course, beyond that, as you upgrade your housing, being able to have more space to put more furniture and increasing the allowance in your treasure chests and stuff like that.
Right. So we will see you back on stream now, and I hope you guys enjoyed a little look in more detail on the housing structure.
Back to us.
Now we wreck his house. Go.
See you soon. Bye. Hey guys.
All right, now we're back. So hopefully people enjoyed that. It seemed like they did. We had a lot of, I see follow-up questions in regards to housing and things of that sort. A lot of them in there. So for instance, like, how is housing going to work when you have friends that are playing with you, like giving them permissions and things of that sort?
And yeah, we can address a few of those. So we have mentioned in the past that there will be a permissions-based system that kind of is based on you inviting members into your, quote-unquote family, so to speak, and that allows you to essentially assign those permissions on a per-item basis. So, for example, if you want them to have access to be able to open the door and enter the home, you can do that. If you want them to be able to access your crops, you can have them do that. If you want them to be able to utilize storage from a deposit standpoint or withdrawal standpoint, you can do that as well.
If you want somebody to come in and decorate your house but not take anything out of your house, you can do that too.
I used to do that for people all the time in a few other games that I've played because I just like the decorating part of stuff. It's fun.
Oh, for sure.
There's going to be a lot of cool stuff you're going to be able to do in this.
Yeah, and besides, I mean, if you think about it, the sizes of houses that are available on the EndNode system, all the way up to that mansion level, it'll be pretty lonely if you just had it all by yourself,
Yeah, too much space.
And then obviously some folks are wondering, keep in mind that this is early iterations of this system. So folks who are looking at this and being like, this is how it is, this is not going to be the end of what it looks like when we're doing housing. There's going to be many, many iterations as we move forward. But there's been questions in regards to, like, is the house going to be fully furnished, like, right from the get-go? Because obviously right now it is whenever you first purchase.
Yeah, it's there to just kind of show you what our furniture looks like and the fact that you can put furniture into a house. But no, these houses will come empty, and it's up to you to decorate them.
Yeah.
And talk to other crafters to craft furniture for you.
Right, and I noticed somebody asked, how much would these houses cost? So there's going to be an initial set price that is augmented by the number of citizens a node has. So, you'll be able to buy a house cheaper at the start of a node than you would if there were a lot of citizens that are going to be present. So it gets adjusted with that regard. And then after the house is purchased, you saw in this video that I was able to sell back to the node. That is not necessarily going to be a feature. It can default back to the node if the property taxes are not paid, but there will be a balance and penalties that must be assumed by the new purchaser and through sort of like a foreclosure process in that regard. But on the flip side of essentially the real estate side of this, players can own a home early and they can list it for sale for other players. So to kind of name what that price is going to be really is kind of dependent on the player-driven economy side.
And I know we've asked this question before, but I've seen it a couple times in here in regards to, like, how land and how purchasing houses will work. Is it as far as, like, competition goes? Like, if me and you were trying to go for the same plot of land or same house, that kind of thing.
What was that? I'm sorry. You cut out for me.
Fully.
Oh, interesting.
Say that one more time. What was that?
I said some folks, I know we've kind of answered some of this question before and talked about it a bit, but folks are wondering when it comes to purchasing or attaining land, if, let's say, me and Steven both are trying to go for the same plot of land, how is that going to work competition-wise?
Got it. So that particular interaction is going to be something that we test in alphas and betas, because we want to ensure that the process is both equitable and makes sense from an achievement standpoint for certain players. There's a few ideas that we have that include essentially creating a grace period at the start of a node's essentially advancement. So when it advances to the stage where new housing comes online, there's going to be a period of time that must elapse before the housing becomes available for auction. And at that point, then it would become essentially an auction system where there will be a period of time where players can place reserve bids starting at the minimum reserve that is determined by the starting value of the city and essentially the number of citizens that are present, as I was discussing before. At which point, at the end of that auction, the highest bidder will win the house.
Yeah, and this is just for in-node housing, so this doesn't apply to freeholds, which are kind of a
Correct.
different animal entirely.
Right, and freeholds actually we're not allowing. Right now our stance on freeholds is not to allow the sale of freeholds. That is something that we will also, potentially has an opportunity to change. We're going to take into consideration. The real goal with regards to the freehold system not being sellable is that, again, it's a very restrictive and kind of achievement-based development, and we don't want players necessarily to have the opportunity to curtail that process by just purchasing outright all of the infrastructure that gets established by another player. And at the same time, remember that freeholds are limited to one per account as well. So it would be a fairly limited kind of a system if we were to allow that to be sold, because it's something that many players are going to want to achieve.
It would be like selling off your own skill points or something. Like that is not something we want
Exactly.
to do.
People are like, can I steal from other people's homes? Obviously, there's permissions we kind of already talked about, so that would not allow you to steal.
So real funny thing though, actually on that topic, early on I did have a thought process with regards to kind of a family system. Remember we were talking a little bit about how you can invite people to your family, right? Well, I was thinking how the same way that guilds have wars with each other, is you can have families that have rivalries with each other. And it would be really cool if there was like
Hatfields and McCoys.
Exactly. It would be really cool if there was like a quest system relating to family rivalry as sort of like a de facto guild war rivalry, where an objective was placed within the home of your rival family or some property they own. And on that quest line, you would have to go sneak in and steal that thing if you were like flagged, But maybe that'll be an expansion thing later on. It's just a fun idea I had earlier.
But that wouldn't be like your stuff. That would be like a thing that was placed there. Yeah, like a family heirloom or something like that. Quest.
You can't steal actual property or items of other players in the game, but we want to kind of simulate that thievery, that that type of rogue interaction through a quest, objective type system would be cool. And we do have those types of things planned for societies and organizations anyways. So, it would just be a duplication of that process on a family level.
And then some folks are wondering, like, what if, Jeff and I want to buy into a house together? Is there a way for us to like do that? Or is it always someone is like the owner?
Well, it's always going to have an owner-based system. So it'll be a single owner-based system for those types of properties, for properties in general. But it doesn't prevent players, obviously, from collaborating and pooling resources in order to achieve certain achievements in the game. I think that's obviously an important part of MMORPGs. It's a collaborative environment or adversarial, depending on how you want to spin your own experience. But there's definitely collaboration there, but it is a one-owner system.
Some folks want to know if they can like hire security, like if the town's guards will like protect their houses and stuff.
Well, now that is dependent on the mayor you elect and the application of the coffers, the treasury funds, right? Because as the mayor, there are a lot of application of the funds for the treasury. You can either continue the foundational development of the node, excuse me, through activating certain quest lines by using treasury funds, or creating certain buildings, projects, or dedicating defense money towards hiring mercenaries that can be purchased by caravan spawners, or mercenaries that can participate in the node sieges. These are the types of defense decisions that have to be kind of made at a mayoral level, which are representing the populace of the city.
Do you want to be Athens or do you want to be Sparta?
Exactly.
And of course, we've talked about this before, but just because this might be a new user that's in chat that's asking this, specifically wondering, if a siege happens in our town and I lose my house, how that works and what happens to my loot. Do I lose stuff? Things like that.
Yeah, so essentially, if you're so there's a few things with regards to that. One, if the house gets destroyed, you're not going to lose the progress and decor and essentially the interior items. Those are going to be available for you to essentially place into a new building. Um, uh, when you get one. And on the flip side of that, if let's say you do have the option toggled to advance your home type to the next level with the nodes advancement, or if you want to keep your small home because you like a that's an option that the player gets to choose. If they do advance, I was just talking with Bacon actually yesterday. So funny about the advancement side of things, and Bacon had a great idea, which I really love. Is instead of having those materials mailed to a character, which is the expectation that kind of I had, he was thinking, what if in the new home that they're moved into, there were crates that they had to open. And they had to like essentially move their furniture that way, right? I was thinking that's a great idea. And then I thought maybe we should have like an RNG chance where one of the movers accidentally like nicked one of the furniture pieces and like it gets destroyed or has to be repaired. Or there's like a little caravan in front that's like your moving truck and you have to grab the crates there first and then it spawns in the building and then you open the crates. Like these are just kind of
And
like
there's like a really small box of books that's way too heavy.
exactly. So, they're just fun little ideas, that we're kind of thinking on that front. But no, to answer your question, essentially, the idea is not to make the process tedious or cumbersome. Once you've achieved kind of creating these interior decor items, because change is such an anticipated event constantly in Ashes of Creation, I mean, it's one of the way that you pave the way for new content to occur. We want to make sure that you can get up and running for relatively easy without having to go through the whole process.
You'd still be out the money that you spent to purchase the house. You wouldn't be able to sell that house again, right? There is some risk involved, but the lion's share of the stuff that you've invested in will still return to you.
And we'll answer more questions. Obviously, we have some other stuff that we want to get through. So keep your questions coming as we get closer. Toast is also in chat as Ashes of Creation, I believe. And she'll be tossing me other questions throughout. So keep them coming. We'll answer them as we get to the Q&A section. We do also have a ton from the forums, but we'll try to get to as many as we possibly can. So next up, we have some character stuff. So I'm going to kind of switch us over there, which means I have to like adjust our cameras and things like that. So bear with us for a moment. All right, there we go. So our first thing that we have here to showcase is actually some hair cosmetic, or not hair cosmetic, different types of hair. And I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about this, Stephen.
Yeah, and it's actually in this specific image, it's not just necessarily the hair; it's actually the character model itself, also the facial features. So you may notice that in some of the in the gameplay footage that we release, our character is constantly evolving and getting better on that side. The character team's been exemplary in their work and it just keeps getting better each time with each iteration. So here's an example of a male Kalar, one of their particular hair options. You'll see that our hair system is starting to get more developed as well from a visual aesthetic standpoint.
They said he looks mad.
He's not mad. He doesn't have a soul yet, so he's a very kind of default stoic appearance, which can sometimes be mad. But but no. So this is just kind of to give you guys an update, kind of on that front. The work continues on creating a more polished look on the character front, and yeah, you get to see that.
Cool. And our next thing is actually a series of photos and images kind of showcasing how armor is built. And so this first one is the concept aspect of it. And I know we've talked about this a little bit in the past, but I don't know if you want to kind of go through that process again and I'll walk through it. But basically we have the concept of the Vaylune plate armor. We have the high-res sculpt, the low-res sculpt, the material breakup, and then the final render.
Right. And, when we say concept, right, a lot of people who may not be as familiar with game development think of concept and they kind of think more of like mood pieces and, really kind of illustrated, cool looking stuff. This is more along the side of a production quality concept piece, right, done by Jeff Delier. This is to give insight to the modeler, essentially these pieces, how they connect, what kind of breaking them apart. You're going to see different perspectives. You're going to see it blown up in that regard. So the idea here is not necessarily to create a visually stunning presentation of the armor, so to speak, but to instead give direction for the modelers to accurately create these things. And then here you see, is this that? Oh, this is that.
This is the high-res ZBrush.
I haven't seen the sculpt yet.
Well, now you
I'm
have.
seeing it now. I know I have a backlog of things I have to go through and review, but this looks good. Who did this one?
I don't have the names on who all did this, but if
Okay.
Catkin's watching, he can like toss me, tell me who it is.
Sure. So this is the extension then moving forward for that concept piece to actually get modeled into the high res sculpt. This is all of these are individual pieces, and they are individual pieces because not only are the players
They said
granted.
Keith made it, I believe.
Oh, Keith did. Great. Yeah. Looks very good, Keith. So, this is conforms to essentially what the design parameters are for our players to be able to separate each of these individual pieces out, mix and match as they wish. And these are constructed by the character team to accommodate that so that, it doesn't look very weird if I equip, pieces from different sets. As I acquire them, they're still going to flow with each other. And essentially, the way, oh, okay, here we go. Yeah, we got a lot of stuff. Look at that. We
Yeah.
should have had a character
Just
on
gonna
this.
give you
a
the-
character
I know,
artist
yeah.
on to give more insight to this. But essentially, as it goes through the process of becoming game ready, they have to, take that high res and bring it down to something that's manageable in the engine and can be, put into scale of what you're going to expect to see with 50, hundreds and hundreds of players on screen. And essentially, this process makes it game ready. It then gets applied by design into the engine, and gets assigned to specific gets assigned icons, gets assigned where you can acquire these things with loot tables and merchants, and then it becomes available for players to utilize.
Yeah, and so this is where, you actually see the textures and things of that sort coming to play before the final render.
Now, this is where a lot of customization can be done on the character side to create different variants of the different geo pieces for the armor. So essentially, you can play with those materials and those textures to essentially create a very different appearance of what is essentially the same geo piece. And that allows essentially concept artists and designers to kind of say, hey, I want a thematic set based off of, let's say, a lion or tiger, right? And these are the colors that I would, like to see. And at that point, then the concept artist, will, or even the character modeler will take this set of geo, essentially going back to the high res, low res stuff, and we'll start assigning, different textures and materials to these pieces so that they look radically different.
Yeah, and that's the final render. Well, not final render, but final render work in progress. So thank you to the character team for supplying that. The next ones are kind of fun. Here we go. We've got this little guy. So cute.
Hi, buddy.
The Ram.
I can't remember his name, though,
I
specifically.
can't either.
I don't remember his
It's like
specific name either.
Ramstead or something, or something.
Rammstein.
Ramstein? No, Ram something.
Ram Holler.
Ram Holler? Yeah, but I think there was a Ram something else in there too. But
And then this
Yeah.
is the creature with, those materials on it. And then you also are seeing it pulling the...
yeah, so this is a junior accented caravan, essentially, and this is the finished model of it. And I think this was a cosmetic, wasn't it?
I do believe so.
I do believe
Yeah.
so, yeah.
Okay, cool. The Ramstone Hauler. Oh, what did I say?
I said Ram Holler.
But anyways,
Got the stone part.
This is essentially, as you guys know, there are a lot of different skins that are available as players accomplish and achieve the items in game through non-pay-to-win methods. That they are able to essentially assign skins to these different things to kind of customize the appearance in a way that makes them stand out. And yeah, this looks great. I think Carson did this.
The next one we have is our lovely Watcher of the Woods. So this is the concept, which you all have seen already. And this is what the little guy looks like.
Hi, buddy.
Yeah.
So this is a pet, I believe.
Yeah, it's a little pet. I think this was also a cosmetic. But to give, excuse me, to give a size comparison, I thought we had a size comparison, but to give a
At one point
size,
we did.
to give a size comparison, this guy's body is probably about the size of 2 character heads. And the wingspan is probably equal to the arm length of a Kalar from tip to tip on 2 arms. So he's a pretty sizable from a wingspan standpoint, but that's just because he's in a T-pose a little bit here, it looks like maybe. When he's actually flying, those will be more tucked in and stuff.
Yeah, and we'll have more creation videos coming out, so stay tuned for those. And you'll get to see more of these creatures like actually in the world and doing their thing. Yeah, these are just the renders. The next one we have is the Luminous Starcrawler. I had so much fun. This is one that I actually got to design. And so cute. I think I actually have them in the wrong order.
Oh no, do we have a concept?
That's not a concept?
That's a model.
That's the model.
It really doesn't look
I
like
think
it.
I
It looks
just
so
maybe I
good.
did. Oh, here it is. So this is the concept originally. What I kind of was going for was like I really love the idea of like kind of like a lizard of some type, but like combined with like this little furry creature, like a chinchilla.
A chameleon.
Yeah, like a chameleon and a chinchilla. And this theme was all like star caller, watcher in the stars, kind of like oracle themed, and so I think it just really turned out really good.
Yeah, let's go back to the model. You'll notice
how
on the
cute he is.
concept that there are essentially kind of star charty looking effects that are on the body. This is the model. Once the effects pass is done, you're going to see essentially some type of iteration where there's some perhaps emissive effect that shimmers over the skin every now and then that kind of illuminates these constellations. I think that would be kind of a cool effect or approach. I like the stars in his eyes too.
Yeah, really neat. It'll be cool to see it when it's all finalized with all of the effects and stuff. Next one we have is a goblin. So I have a couple different versions of this. So while you're talking about it, Stephen, I will transition between those 3 images.
Sure. This is the first time I have also seen this. I know I have a large backlog of stuff to review, but this looks great. I think Atkins worked on this one as we're kind of fleshing out, different biomes and environments. I know that they have a long list of creatures that need to get made, and this kind of skirts on the side of traditional expectations from a fantasy standpoint when you think of goblins, but he also has a little bit darker twist. I mean, looking at his head and stuff, it's not that cartoony or more kid friendly maybe look
That
for
nose
a goblin.
legit scares me.
I know.
Yeah, it definitely creeps me
I'm so
out.
uncomfortable looking at it.
Also, like the proportions creep me out, but I'm into it. Like as a monster, like I want to. I don't like whenever there's something
Oh, he's got a ton
cute.
of character.
Like the Starcrawler, I don't want to kill those. I want to tame them and have them as pets. But this, maybe.
Now it's important to note, like you're seeing these limbs again in what we call a T-pose, and this is prior to getting his stances set up in animation, and he's gonna maybe be more crouched in appearance, and he's got obviously a little bit of oversized kind of forearms there, and that's because at least with regards to these types of minor races that exist on the dark side of Vera, there are variants across those minor races. So, there are going to be different types of goblinoid-esque creatures, and this one apparently has, not skipped out on his leg or arm day, which is a good thing for him because he's probably going to be in a lot of
forearm
fights.
day.
Or
forearm day,
look at
yeah.
his abs. Like, no. Any
Right.
day. He's got it.
So he may have, there may be variants of his type that have large weapon structures, and can be more burst oriented as opposed to consistent DPS oriented type combat, right? And that just kind of reflects, I think, the way we want these creatures, to not just reflect appearance-wise, their combat capabilities, but also to give a nice, rich lore history behind, why these guys look different than one another and stuff.
Yeah.
The chat
Don't
is
forget
killing
that
me.
corruption has touched everything.
I can't stop laughing at the stuff chat saying. And then our last but not least, turtles are like one of my favorite animals, so I'm very excited about this. This is the Shell of the Ancients.
Ooh, the Shell of the Ancients.
So this is the concept piece that y'all saw before. And this is him. I love his little face. He looks like he's like, yeah, I'm gonna do something mischievous.
This guy might be my favorite.
Yeah, he's pretty good. I think Jincy worked on this guy, and essentially, again, you're not seeing the effects stage yet. That needs to come. There's I think Jim has some great ideas for how to manifest that swirling cosmic kind of appearance under the shell for those, and I think it's going to look really cool. They don't look as pronounced now because the effects aren't present, but after the effects pass, I think we're going to see much more kind of pronounced cosmic effect under the shell. But yeah, the idea here is, this guy has a story to tell, and he's
seen something.
He's
My
He's been around the
favorite.
block.
I love him.
What was this guy called again? I can't
This
remember.
is the Shell of the Ancients, I believe.
Shell of the Ancients. That's right.
Mhm.
Jeff, I think that was your name. Didn't you go with Shell of the Ancients? Yeah.
This is my guy.
This was pre me joining the team, but I love turtles and I love space, so this is like everything that I love in one creature. I'm into it.
He's pretty cool.
Awesome. And I think that's it from our character team. Thank you so much for all of their amazing work that they've also done a ton of other stuff, but obviously this is what we're sharing with you all as we move forward. We'll have a lot more things as we go on. We're going to switch into our Q&A segment, but for a moment there's going to be a little weirdness because I do want to play like that video a little bit more for people while we're chatting. But I have to like do some adjustments, so there might be some weird audio for a second. If y'all give me a moment.
Unacceptable.
Unacceptable. If Steven and y'all want to chat while I'm trying to fix that.
Hi, Steven, how's your
you
Friday?
Play a little jig or something. My Friday is extremely busy today.
Really?
I'm concerned to act. I left my phone was at 1% when we started the stream, so I put it on the charger, but it's over at my desk. So I'm concerned after the stream when I go and pick it up.
You just hear it buzzing over there?
Oh, I do. It's just nonstop. Just beep, 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 beep. It's just like a constant flow.
That's good stuff, though, right?
Oh yeah,
Good
very
messages.
good stuff. Very good stuff. All very good. But yeah, no, we've got a lot of stuff cut out for us still, and things are moving along swimmingly.
Yeah, I gotta say this year has gone by really fast, but looking back, like we've gotten a ton of stuff done up until now.
I don't think it could go by any faster. I want to get
I
out
don't
of
think
this
so
year.
either.
I want to go
cannot
out.
believe that we are at July.
Yeah, the faster we get through 2020, the better.
That's true.
So, like, I also feel like I'm in the Twilight Zone, literally, as probably many of you feel. It's just kind of crazy to turn the TV on each day, as
Not
I'm
even the
eating
TV,
lunch or
just
whatever.
looking at social media even.
Yeah, I don't look at any of that stuff.
I saw
try
this
not
one
to.
great
You're like,
post
that's what I hire
today.
you to do. You look at that
Exactly.
stuff.
I go on Discord, and that's Discord, the forums, and our Reddit, and I try to read everything people put. But that's pretty much the extent of my outside information. Otherwise, everything lives on Slack for me.
Oh, you're missing out on a lot of crazy stuff that's happening. My thing on that front is just be kind and respectful to everybody. Like that is one thing, and be safe. So I got everything set up. We'll play this video on repeat while we chat and answer questions because you probably want to see this more than you want to see our mugs. So I do have a lot of questions if y'all are ready.
Sure.
All right, here we
Always
go.
ready.
Our first question is, and I'm apologize if I start spelling people's names wrong or pronouncing people's names wrong. I don't know. I'm sorry. So Sephiroth HD wants to know, are there any plans to implement an active shield block function outside of spells or abilities?
It's something we've talked about. We've definitely talked about having an active block system. We've played around with it in APOC. We've actually tested
Yep.
it out there. It is problematic, and especially in terms of the timing, the split-second timing you need for something like that generally. So I'm not sure. We played around with it. Not super happy with the way that it's turned out. So
Yeah, when we, in APOC, when we had the active shield stance, that was a active shield block, action-based system. And when we collected design data on essentially the efficacy and essentially the accuracy of players who use that, wasn't very high. And there's a concern, at least on the front of implementing a action restricted type active shield block as opposed to what would traditionally be more along the lines of activating a buff that grants a
Right.
shield block rate adjustment and is universal on incoming damage.
And talks to your stats.
Exactly, and interfaces with the stats is really something that we're leaning towards in incorporating for the hybrid combat system. Part of the difficulty, obviously, and this is something we're still actively iterating on and actively going to be testing in our hybrid system. But as we're doing that, we are taking into consideration, obviously, we want action-based components to also interact in some way, shape, or form with the waterfall stat system as well. And that seems like it might be an oxymoron from an action to tab sense, but it doesn't have to be. There can be components of action. So say for instance, you could have a dual component where you activate that shield stance, and if you accurately intercept an incoming projectile or a skill that's been initiated from the forward arc, you get 80% damage mitigation or 80% application of the physical defense of the shield. And if it comes from an area outside of that forward arc, then you get a lesser bonus. And that that essentially what would happen is, let's say you take into account the stat of the shield's physical defense value, you apply it as a mitigating factor to the incoming damage, but in addition, you augment that system with the waterfall stat that is responsible for shield damage mitigation or shield rate. And maybe, the default skill says 80% damage mitigation from forward arc, but that gets augmented up to 87% because of your stat, essentially. And if it's not in your forward arc, then it gets 50% efficacy. Maybe it's 40 something percent. So just to give you kind of insight into what goes into kind of determining these skills and how they interact on an action-based front, is it possible we will have that? Yes, we're going to be testing it. We've had it in APOC. We'll be testing it in Alpha 1 and Alpha 2 likely, but there will be an iteration process.
I just wanted to say I saw in chat Gold Mecro said the APOC shield wasn't really active as it didn't let you lower attack. I was actually referring to the weapon block, which was a little bit different.
Oh, right. So you would press, I think it was tab. Yeah. Was it tab that actively blocked?
I think it was tab. I think default was tab, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to, excuse me. I do not believe we will have a similar function as any time a player can utilize, a tab button. I think we want to kind of incorporate that into essentially the passive and active skills because it makes it a little bit more relevant as so long as it's not universal across all shield holders, right? We want that to be a conscious decision, I think, that's made from a skill point allocation standpoint. That topic's up for discussion internally with other designers. That's just kind of my feeling on that, but yeah.
And another follow-up question, which is, what about dodge roll?
Dodge roll will be again. It's kind of a similar idea to the tab active block function in APOC. Is that mobility components like dodge roll I want to house within a active skill set, and I want that to make a I want that to be a conscious decision that reflects the roles that should have those types of abilities. The more rogue and fighter, or different type of agile classes. So again, my first instinct there is that it's not going to be present outside of a skill standpoint, but yes, there will be skills that incorporate mobility and dodges that certain classes will have access to, and other classes will have access to teleports, and a lot of different types of mobilities.
Cool. Our next question, we have a lot of them to go through. That was a long answer for our first question. We have a question from Tug. No, you're good. You have a question from Tug of War, who wants to know, looking at the official world map that has been released, is the geography going to act as a boundary to cause the world to have choke points? Example being non-traversable, or example of mountains being non-traversable.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Even though we're an open world, that doesn't mean that from a design perspective, especially with the way our economic systems work, that we will want to create essentially geographic choke points.
It also helps with optimization too.
Right, exactly.
Cool. Our next question is from Zilch, and they want to know, previously it was mentioned that you had to own property to become a citizen. However, in the most recent video, it appeared to be the reverse. Has the housing and citizen system changed?
Yeah, so originally, my intention was that housing was a required ownership prior to the citizenship, but I've kind of reversed those. Essentially, in order to own housing within a node, you must be a citizen, and I don't think this is something we're going to test, but I don't think we're going to go along the lines of requiring citizenship to have home ownership in a node. So for example, and because you can own one of each type of housing, so you can own a static in-node house, you can own an apartment instance, and you can own a freehold system. Because you can own one of those, each of those types, it doesn't make sense that we would force players essentially to co-locate all of those types within the same node. We want there to be an opportunity for you to have a summer house, or whatever, in a different area.
Summer house on the beach.
Yeah.
So Leonardo wants to know, will power, gear, and ability levels increase with expansions?
Yes, they will. Level cap will increase, and along with level cap increases, there will be new content and an ever-present, essentially gear chase to keep it relevant for players to continue and utilize content. Because in addition to the gear upgrading, you're going to have harder content to overcome, and in order to overcome that content, you'll need to have upgrades available for the gear. I noticed there was a few questions in the chat, by the way, with regards to flying. Just as I know we say this often, but flying is normally restricted to royalty classes, which are guild leaders of castles or mayors of metropolises, and sometimes, very rarely, legendary drops from legendary world bosses. In the alpha, however, and on GMs especially, we have the ability to fly it whenever we want.
Makes it really convenient.
Yeah, exactly. So
especially when we're trying to show things off, for sure. And you can use those flying mounts, some of them as glider mounts. So even if you bought like flying-esque creatures, a lot of them can be used for glider mounts as well.
Yes.
And then Milk Boy has the question from the forum saying, how do you intend to prevent players from abusing the armor appearance / transmog system to deceive other players in open world PvP?
So essentially, I think what you're talking about is from a threat assessment standpoint. When you see a player approaching you and they're wearing a transmog, you don't know if that person is high damage mitigation against physical damage or against magical damage. And essentially, the way we overcome that is through you being able to target a player at a distance, and they will have a buff that's present on them that you will see, which indicates that essentially the piece set that they are wearing. It is important for players to be able to ascertain from a threat assessment standpoint, what they're going up against if they're actively checking that, and that will be available.
All right. I'm not going to say this person's name, but Toast, why would you do this to me? Their question was, luckily I read it before I just read it on. Will there be events or possibly other reasons that could cause a season to be longer or shorter than the usual 1 week window?
for sure.
Yeah, we've answered that in the past. There's essentially an opportunity where certain world events, whether they be raid boss related or otherwise, have an opportunity to not only radically change the current season that a zone might be in, but also has the opportunity to elongate certain seasons as well. And seasons, as you guys know, have implications from a spawner standpoint. Winter might have a spawner that activates on a road that spawns a large fallen tree, and players who see that will have an opportunity to go up and exert some type of one-time action that helps in removing that tree, and it might require X number of people to do that before the tree gets removed. And that, as an example, is not beneficial for the transit of goods because, as you know, caravans require, well, they don't require, but they move better on roads. And if that tree were present, let's say blocking, a road that led to a bridge per se, that they would have to off-road, that just kind of presents obstacles that make the transit of goods a little bit more interesting because of the seasons.
Right. And our next question is from Fushi, wondering, are there plans to incorporate more movement-based attacks and advantages? Example, back attacks, side attacks, strafing, increased evasion, moving backwards, increasing block and parry.
Not necessarily like that, like moving backwards, increasing block and parry, but there definitely will be positional attacks, and there will be positional like buffs and things that you can do based on your facing that will change the way an ability works in a number of different ways. It won't just be relegated to rogues, but rogues will probably see like most of those. But yeah.
Yeah, I think another component from positioning that I personally like in other games, but not in MMOs that I've seen before. Really, I think maybe actually I have. I don't know, but essentially height-based mechanics as well, where if you're firing at a target with a ranged attack that is higher up than you, they may have increased evasions, or your accuracy might be greater if you fire down on a target. Those are also kind of position-based systems as well.
All right. And our next question is here from Wembley, and Wembley wants to know, do members of guilds need to be citizens of the same node in order to benefit from the passive skills and augments gained through the guild progression system?
No. That is
separate.
Yeah, those are.
I feel like we have answered something similar to that before. Maybe not that specific question. Undead Canuck wants to know, are there going to be areas/places in the world where casting is enhanced? Example, a mana pool and that boost your power when you stand in it. And you actually kind of just said something like that with the range, but they're asking specifically more of environment.
Yeah, we've talked about that with seasons and weather, especially when we're talking about like elemental-based skills. We've talked about like possibly something similar to like ley lines, where there are like magical, strong magical places in the world that change or alter the way that spells work. So there's stuff like that we're talking about. For sure, the weather thing is probably going to see its way into the main. But of course, we got to test it all out and see how it works and make sure that all that stuff is equitable.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I think the most direct application of what that question was referring to might be with regards to some of the siege systems. So, for example, castle owners and or mayors of cities will have access to different types of defense mechanisms, and part of those defense mechanisms will be laying down certain types of essentially relics that the. So we've talked in the past about relics, and relics are essentially achievements that node citizens have for participating in certain world events or defeating the events that spawn to attack the city, and those get held in the reliquary. Now you can essentially, as the mayor, dedicate treasury funds towards specific buildings that can research and unlock abilities of those relics, right, outside of their craftable applications. And those might then unlock available defense items that can be purchased with treasury funds. And some of those items might be like laying down one of the relics, and proximity to that relics might increase the magic damage of your defenders, or they might increase the range attacks of your archers, or they may augment the total health of your citizens. Those are types as cities develop and they achieve things as a unit, they will earn certain items that can be utilized during sieges as well.
Cool. Yeah, their example with that one was particularly like a mana pool that boosts your power when you stand in it. So that was like their example. So I don't know if it was necessarily siege related, but just putting
Well, I mean, you might get the mana pool through the relic. Who knows?
Oh yeah, true, maybe. T. Elf's question is: there has been talk of what gear you're. There's been talk of what gear you're wearing showing your progression. How would armor cosmetics fit into this?
Talk about gear showing progression. So, the thing about transmogs and/or cosmetics is they essentially, replace the silhouette of the tiered gear system by default appearance, right? So you're really not going to show necessarily progression with regards to the silhouette through costumes or cosmetic items.
Yeah, that would be extremely expensive for
Yeah.
us to do.
You'd have to make a
the
different one
reflect-
per every
yeah.
single. Yeah, it'd be nuts.
But I see what you're getting at. It would be very, very cool to do something like that, but probably not in the cards for us.
Now, with that being said, however, and as it relates to the previous question with regards to threat assessment of a player's gear from a distance, that buff that I spoke about where you see essentially what the components of armor they're wearing by hovering over that buff if you target them, you'll also see a tier that reflects the level of gear they're wearing as well. So that is also an added threat assessment component.
Right. Hopefully that answered your question. The Lazy Peon wants to know, can you walk us through what the first week of Ashes of Creation might look like from the point of view of someone in an organized PvP or PvPvE guild? Example, what does a typical play session look like? What could we realistically accomplish?
Oh my gosh, what
That's
a
a
question.
that's a lot.
Do we have another hour?
Exactly. That question's like, what are my objectives, in the game? And there's so many.
Also, it depends on
many.
what you're doing that day too, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not even so much what you're doing. Like, okay, so I think
Because
the question.
this is the first.
So the question
week.
is regarding, but the first week there's so many
There's so much
possible
going on.
directions,
Yeah.
right?
For sure.
So essentially, the question is established in the fact that I'm a player, I'm a part of an organized guild, and my guild has an interest in both PvP and PvE. Okay. So from that perspective, right, you have two, and this might be a long-winded answer, and I hope I don't get too long here, but whatever. If you're starting out in a game that has multiple progression paths, all of which are interdependent in some way, shape, or form with one another, you have things that have to be made as a decision in your best approach, right? Is your goal going to be to level up as quickly as possible so that you can attempt certain world bosses before other guilds do? And and then by doing so, you are now getting access to some of the legendary gear as a result of that? Is your focus going to be to establish an economic infrastructure so that the crafters of your guild can start to craft gear and/or potions and items that are going to help you in your adventuring, which again leads you to acquiring gear to accomplish content? Is your goal going to be to establish your housing so that you can try to corner a market on processing goods and earn a lot of gold and funnel that into your acquisition of gear? Are you going to attempt to establish your guild and focus on guild related quests that help to level the guild so that you can assign passive skills to your members and become the most advantaged in guild versus guild type combat, which is objective based?
Watching Jeff's face during this is great because he's just like, there's so much, and he's like, next.
Just checking him off in my head. I'm like,
and then additionally, are you going to find a node and try to focus all of your efforts from the guild in helping to establish that node so that you can get in early on the housing and have access to essentially the systems and mechanics that get constructed through the mayoral systems and allow the construction of buildings so that you can have access to higher end gear in that regard? Are you going to go into some of the professions like animal husbandry and breeding the best mounts so that you can be the fastest on the battlefield? Are you going, there's so many decisions that essentially have to be made on what the goals are going to be.
And it's also just not just that, right? Like all those things that you just talked about are all related to each other, right? Where
Exactly.
the progression of your guild towards, PvE content is going to be locked out or challenged in some way with the development of the nodes or the development of the crafters on the server, or all those things are kind of touching each other and depend on each other in order to be successful. So
Yeah.
lots of
And
cool stuff going on.
so and I also want to caveat, the very intricate designs that are in Ashes of Creations, with an understanding that it's been my experience that the less cookie cutter and more intricate a game systems become, the smaller your demographic and or player base is, right? So while all of these systems are very intricate, when it comes to progression and gameplay and fun and experiencing stuff, they're pretty straightforward, and they're pretty traditional from an understanding standpoint, even though there's a lot of depth there. The idea is not to essentially push away new players because the systems are too complicated to understand, but rather to present a more traditional facing experience from the MMORPG perspective, but also to include a significant amount of depth that the player has the opportunity to essentially go down. Now, that's also why many of our systems are socially connected as well. You create these pseudo factions in our non-faction based game, which is essentially citizenship, guildmanship, society, alignment, being a part of alliances within guilds or within nodes, and being able to participate in group events like defending cities or fights against monsters and raids and stuff. All of those things are, and also on top of that, the fact that our party and raid systems will have a voice over IP built into the game, so that you can easily meet new people and be able to chat with them without having to exchange Discord information or TeamSpeak, whatever. The more connected you are with people, right? Not only is it good for the business, because from a retention standpoint, the more social connections you have, the higher the gravity is of the game to keep you involved. But also from a gameplay perspective, as you expand your social atmosphere, you also expand your knowledge base, and you get to interact with people who have done things perhaps you have not, and you can collect some of that information from them as well. So, this is all some things that I take into consideration, obviously, when designing these systems and how they're integrated with one another. It's in order to present not only a option for the player to kind of choose their way forward, but also to connect them with others and make sure that the depths of the system aren't too scary.
There was your long answer to your question.
And that was a quick
It's a
version.
very impact question.
That was a
yeah.
super quick version, by
Yeah.
the way.
Yeah, we could be here for an entire cast answering that question, because obviously a week's worth of gameplay is a lot of content. Now there are about 10 more questions if you all want to go through these. Obviously we've already answered quite a few.
I can try to
you
speed.
have
We can try
time.
to speed answer them.
Okay, cool, because I know we got time. People
I'm
need
just gonna
lunch
bite
and all
my
that.
tongue.
Our next question here is from Jathade, which wants to know, are the cosmetics that are part of the pre-order packages going to look different on each race, or exactly as pictured? Example, how would a cloak look with a Tulnar tail, etc.?
They will have some slight variations across the races, but generally we're going to keep those cosmetics fairly fairly the same as what's represented in the image. But God, sorry, I'm going to try to keep that answer short. So yes, the answer is that they will tend to be different across the races, but will keep a similar appearance to the original.
Wazday wants to know, will mounts have an unlimited lifespan? Will they live forever?
Certain
won't
mounts
age and
will.
die.
Yeah, certain mounts will, but legendary mounts that we described as a means by which people can use to fly, those will have lifetimes. And essentially, the lifetimes will begin once the mount is rideable. So you'll receive it in an egg fashion. There will be a process in which you have to essentially level it up and get it rideable. And then at that rideable state forward is when it will begin to tick its lifetime. But most mounts, the vast majority of mounts outside of the legendary drop ones, will not have lifetimes.
George wants to know, what characteristics do you look for in a student looking to join the game industry if prior experience thus work is not part of the criteria? So like an entry level just
Totally
position.
depends on which department you want to
Yeah.
apply for, right? Design, make a game, make a small game, make something that I can play. Art and code is a little bit different. I can't quite speak to those, but yeah, that's a big answer.
Yeah, I think that traditionally what you experience in the game industry from entry level people who are interested in joining, right? You kind of find those avenues through either community, QA, or
Customer service.
customer service. Thank you. Those tend to be kind of as you're going through classes and learning about whatever specific field that you're trying to get into, whether it be design, engineering, or art, right, or production or whatever. Those tend to be the entry level positions that people then work their way up from after they've completed classes and whatnot. But it's also entirely possible that you don't have to go that route and you just go through schooling and you complete, your learning experience in one of those fields, and you apply as a junior entry level or internship. Try to get internships as well during your learning process. We've had several interns at the studio that we've taken from Art Institute and from DeVry, I think, as well. So there's a lot of different avenues. It really just
Have a
depends on what
portfolio.
focus.
Like that is a big
Yes.
thing. Is have a portfolio. Don't just say I love games, but have something that can really show like I've done work to kind of earn my way onto this team.
Absolutely.
And those roles and responsibilities are usually provided on like the job application process. So definitely read through those. If you can do all those things, then and you can showcase that in your interview or through your portfolio, those things are helpful. Also, networking's huge. There's a lot of events. Like I know, for instance, we're in San Diego, so there's a lot of game dev meetups, game jams. So if you've never made a game before, game jams are a great way to do that because you're able to work with a team and see how working with a team works.
What I would not recommend is doing what I did, in which case, I started the studio and and went straight to creative director, which has definitely caused an early onset Alzheimer's for myself because there's been so much that I've had to learn over the past 5 years. But yeah.
It's okay. You got this. Jalan has a question for us, which is, what happens if two guilds try to drop a castle siege declaration flag at the same castle for the same siege week?
So castle sieges don't use a castle flag declaration system. Castle sieges have a registration window in which guilds that are of an appropriate level may sign up to attack. The declaration system is with reference to the node siege system, where there is an elaborate resource and quest line that's required to achieve the declaration scroll. Excuse me.
He's coughing. That's why he's pausing. For those of you who are like, he keeps pausing.
But on the registration front for the castle sieges, once your guild has attained a certain level, you'll be able to register for the castle siege. And we've gone into detail, and you can look up through the wiki, which is generously provided by Lex, essentially how castle sieges work with regards to the subordinate nodes that are in the prior weeks before the castle sieges. So sorry, I don't want to elaborate too far.
It's okay. Our next question is from Swarth, who wants to know, is the goal to have the Phoenix Initiative instance be cross-region as well as cross-server, including both EU as well as NA players? And I think we've already answered that.
I missed the front part of that question. I'm so sorry.
The Phoenix Initiative instance. Will it be cross-region
The
and
intention
cross-server?
that I have that I'd like to see is that there is an access to the Phoenix Initiative that's present within cities at the town hall location, and that will essentially port them to a cross-server instance, but that would be region defined. So it would not share with servers that are essentially in a different continent, right? The EU server, so to speak.
Cool. Our next question is from Azuril, who wants to know, when placing a freehold within the ZOI of a node, will that piece of land be flattened and cleared? If so, will it return to its default appearance if the node is destroyed by siege?
Will the ZOI be flattened and...
Yeah, the ZOI is different from the node itself.
Right.
And you don't really place the ZOI, and you don't. Sorry, my daughter is eating lunch
Yeah.
right now.
to
Dad.
to take over for Jeff. Essentially, the ZOI refers to the playable area around the territory around the node. The node itself, however, the footprint of the node is different, and you don't place that. You don't place really, anything necessarily with regards to nodes. The only thing that players really place is going to be furniture inside a home or a freehold plot. But essentially the footprint of the node, yes, the terrain does get deformed and replaced, so that we can have some varying levels of height within the different districts of the cities as they grow to larger sizes. But so essentially, if that city were to disappear, then the default terrain appearance would become essentially what was there prior, before the Crossroads ever really showed up.
And then our next question is, will there be special animations for parrying, blocking, and evading?
I want to.
Yeah.
We'll see if we get there. That they can be a challenge to implement sort of really reliably. So you might not see them on every evasion or every block, but we do want that kind of stuff to show up.
Perfect. And then Ventharian wants to know, will only military nodes offer the ability to become a bounty hunter, or will all nodes do so?
Jury's still out actually on that one. I know initially that was a function of the military node, but we may expand that process or that quest line, essentially that sign up, to include not only military nodes but also the affiliated nodes. So essentially the vassal nodes of military parent, or nodes that have perhaps a diplomatic alliance with a military node. They would receive an emissary that has that process as well for their citizens. So that's something that we'll be testing.
And we had two people who asked this question, which was, how realistic would you like mount starting, stopping, and momentum to be? Example, stopping immediately like traditional MMOs, or slowing down over time.
I think so there's two questions there. I think if you're talking about like despawning, spawning, and mounting a mount, we want that to be relatively quick. If you're talking about locomotion and essentially the acceleration and deceleration of a mount from an animation standpoint, there are acceleration and deceleration mechanics in place that essentially allow for a higher fidelity of animation with those mounts, as long as you're not, again, dismounting or desummoning. We want that process to be very quick, but on the animation side, I think there's deceleration and acceleration plans.
Oh, there was some clarification in regards to the Phoenix Initiative thing, which was specifically, well, I think you answered it because you said like EU folks would not be able to, like if you're on an EU server, you're not going to be able to join.
Yeah, essentially.
You can join.
You can join initiative. You won't be able to see your fellow NA PI members in the cross-server instance. You'll have an EU-specific cross-server instance and an NA-specific cross-server instance.
And then our last question here, which is from Jamation, who wants to know, freeholds can't be placed near dungeons or other POIs, but will this include POIs for the node as it advances? Example, you've built your freehold in a safe place at the village stage, but now there's a dungeon in your backyard at the city stage.
Those POIs that will have a certain proximity, excluding excluding freehold placements, those will be present regardless of if the POI has advanced due to a node's advancement. So essentially, you will be notified that this location is not available, regardless of whether or not the POI has advanced.
Cool. And I think that's it for all of our questions. We had a lot this dev update. We've been showcasing a lot of stuff, so hopefully y'all have been enjoying it. Let me just check the.
I notice Paradox Jalan is happy about his interview that I'll be doing on July 8th. So I'll give you a little shout out, Jalan.
There you go. And then also, just final reminders again, we will have a new July dev discussion coming up, so stay tuned for that and definitely give us feedback whenever that comes out. We post it on all of our social media channels, so you can't miss it. And of course, if you're watching on the or if you're active on the forums, you'll be able to see it there at the top. Toast is great about keeping those things up to date. Again, our monthly cosmetic swap over has been extended. We'll give you advance notice whenever that changes. And then, of course, if you haven't registered with us yet, definitely do so. And if you already are registered, you're going to get a really cool statue. So I'll show that on the screen again. This is, again, to commemorate the COVID-19 challenge that we are going to overcome. So whenever we're getting closer to the stage where we're going to come back to the office and things of that sort, we'll probably give you like a week's notice or something like that before we wrap that up and grant that to people's accounts. Beyond that, we have our creative directors letter coming up as well. That will be before Stephen's interview, so I'm sure Jalon will add some extra questions in there after that. But I think that's all we have as far as updates and things of that sort that you'll need to know. Definitely follow us on all of the social media channels. They're right here, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. This video will be up tomorrow or today, possibly. It depends on if the YouTube gods want to work with us. But we'll try to get it up as quickly as possible for those of you. And of course, if you're watching on Twitch, follow us here. We always have the VODs ready right away afterwards. And we keep them up there and up to date for you all. We'll have more things as we go. So if you follow us on social media, we'll keep you all notified. We also have an Instagram where we post really cute photos and stuff like that. So you definitely want to hang out with us over there. Anything else, Jeff and Stephen, you want to add?
We covered it all.
Oh, and a Snapchat.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thank you guys for your continued support. We're happy that you guys are happy with the progress of the game, and we look forward to showing you guys more progress as time goes on.
We love you guys.
Yeah, we'll see you on all of our social platforms. We love hanging out with you all at Ashes of Creation. Toodles.